Hein Marx is the man behind the United Liberty Alliance. And this is an organization that has been working for some years, he'll tell us all about it in a moment though, to help the Western Cape become a separate country. Hein, we've heard a lot about the Cape independence movement. I've spoken to those guys a few times, but you have actually been at it for a lot longer. Tell us a little about your background, and before we get on to the whole independence issue, what qualify? Are you a professional?
Okay, well, let's first just go one step back. We don't work for the independence of the Western Cape. We work for the independence of basically all the areas in South Africa where the minorities is actually the majority, which effectively includes the Western Cape, the whole of the Northern Cape, and a part of the Eastern Cape, or in the old terms, the old so-called Cape Province. But it also includes an area up of the Western Free State, and it used to include also the part going into the Transvaal, including Pretoria, with, again, the minorities is in total majority. But we've basically left that, they call it, or they, and I say they called it the Trans-Oranje area. But we were asked by the organization up there, the Afrikaner Strategy Committee, to basically, we work with them, but they deal with that part of it. You ask my background. Well, my background, it comes a long way. But in terms of this, what we're doing here now, in 1999, I received a telephone call, and to make a long story short, it was P.W. Botha that asked me to come and see him in Wilderness, because I live in beautiful Hartenbos. As I sit here, I look at the beach and the
lucky man showing off.
I've got to. I must make you jealous.
Oh dear.
So it's not that far from the Wilderness. So I went through, and actually a very, very good friendship stroke relationship started between us. And I must say that basically kickstarted my whole involvement in getting involved in the solution, and not only bickering and complaining about the problem. We all know the problems. I mean, there's more than enough people that know the problem, and that's all they can do. They can complain and complain and complain. But I always say, don't come to me with a problem, come with a solution. So in this case, we've got a serious problem in South Africa. 8 years ago, when I started officially with the whole secession process, no, I'm not exaggerating, people were literally laughing at me. Mm-hmm. And today, everybody talks about self-determination or secession. So, I'm not taking any credit for that. At least I know in myself that I did, up until now, at least make a difference in terms of making it known to the people that there's a possibility. There's a lot of people that still don't know what it's about, and a lot of people that don't believe it can happen, quite simply because they don't know the legal side of it. I had a call this morning from an advocate that wanted to know, he knows about it, he's following all of this and that, but he'd like to know from me what is the legal basis on why we do, or what we're doing. And I mean, I wasn't even a tenth through, and he said, wow, he didn't realize that. And he didn't realize that that's exactly what we are doing, but he's totally 100% with me. Can he get involved and be one of the advocates on our panel? I said, absolutely. We need each and every person that understands this to get involved, to get the message out. Because the other side of it is, yes, that the legal process is very close on finished. It was designed to take a long time. And it's been a couple of years now, but we are virtually there. So, why?
Just unpack it for us. So you clearly believe this is legally possible. When talking to the Cape Independence Movement and Helen Ziller, indeed, she said it, to her understanding, it wasn't possible. It was intriguing as a suggestion, but that the Cape couldn't succeed. Now, you're talking about something bigger than the Western Cape, and just very in a nutshell, are you going to be challenging the South African Constitution, or is it a global or an international approach that you'll be using?
Alec, the reality is, now I don't even want to go to Helen Ziller, because when Peter Maree and myself had a meeting with her in her office, and that was about 5 years ago, and we mentioned Article 235 of the Constitution that purely talks about self-determination. She wasn't even aware of it. So now, 5 years later, I must believe her if she says it's not possible. And then my question to Helen Ziller is, Helen, you've already proved, and we've got it on paper, where she then said, oh, she didn't know about Article 235. She's got to get the legal people of the DA, one of the advocates, to look at it, and he'll write a report for her. And then she mailed that report to us. Wow, she didn't realize it, and now she said it's not possible.
I might be putting the wrong words in her mouth, but I certainly got that impression that she felt it wasn't legally possible. So it's Article 235 of the Constitution, and it is possible.
Well, Article 235, if you look at Article 235, that's basically just a premise to say that in our Constitution, it is specifically talked about, so it's legal. But your question was, are we challenging the South African Constitution or international law? And no, we're not challenging anything. We are literally using and utilizing the South African Constitution, and I can quote it, Article 231, 233, and in a much lesser extent, but also Article 235. And then the process that we are following is following international law on secession. So there's absolutely nothing illegal that we're doing. We've got senior counsels, in fact, one QC also involved. And no, it's not illegal at all. If it was illegal, I can guarantee you I wouldn't have been talking to you here now. Sure. Not after 8 years in public. It's definitely not illegal, no.
But we do know that South Africa is ruled by a political party that is a centrist, socialist, politically aligned organization. And that together with the EFF, the ANC would be able to change the constitution. Is that a threat to your plans? I.e., you go to court, you get along to this point that, and you can tell us when on the timing of that. But then, just as you're about to execute, there's a change to the constitution that is politically driven, which stops that.
Yeah. Alec, put it this way. I always say that arrogance is one of the most dangerous things in the world. Now, if you are that arrogant, yes, and I'm talking about the ANC government here, directly straight. The arrogance of the ANC government is astounding, unbelievable. Because the more we give them the information that we are working on, the more arrogantly they ignore it. Meaning, your question is, if they change the constitution tomorrow, does it prohibit us from seceding? And my answer to you is no, absolutely not. Because a legal, in this case, an international legal process of which the South African government is part of. The documentation, and this is the so-called exhaustion of all internal remedies, is nothing else, at the end of the day, is nothing else than a thick file of documents to and from the government. So if they want to change the constitution, my first reaction to you would be, and that's why I laughed, which articles are they going to change? And then on what basis would they like to change them? So the more they try and do these things, the more they play into our hands here doing the legal process.
All right.
Because
so
are they going to try and change it? We may not. That's stupid.
where are you in the process? What is, how far down the line are you to your eventual goal, given that you've been working on it, as you say, for some years?
Okay, there are, in terms of international law, there's a lot of things that you must do. The one thing that's the one is not more important than the other one, but the last thing that we worked on that was a very, very difficult, but it's designed in terms of international law to take a lot of time. And that is the so-called exhaustion of all internal remedies. Now, we passed that stage. That's all in documentation form. It's all there. So where we at the moment, we are at the moment at the stage where we so-called need the will of the people, or more effectively, the mandate from the people to say, yes, we want to secede. Yes, we want to be not part of the circus anymore. Now, in terms of the amount of people that's in the area that we have determined, and then again, who's the people? The people are all the people that are legally in that area. And we've made it, I mean, we're not racists at all. It's got nothing to do with race. But we've defined our so-called group of people in terms of international law on secession. They make it very clear, how do you define your group of people? We've done that. And the interesting thing is that the president of South Africa currently, Ramaphosa, has made that clear more than once already in public when he talked about his people. Interesting that a president of a country makes a distinction between his race, ethnicity, and the rest. It's shocking, but that's exactly what happens. And I think we are long past the stage where we've got to start talking around the elephant in the room. We've got to be direct and understand what the problem is. So now, in terms of our group of people, we've determined in terms of the voting districts and the registered voters in those districts that we need 1.9 odd million people to make up the so-called 50% plus one. And we made a round figure and we said 2 million. So once we've got 2 million votes, then we know we are past the 50% acceptable norm for having the so-called will of the people. Now, I must be very honest with you. It is taking much longer and is much more difficult than we all thought to get it. But it's also understandable, because how do you get to, in our case, in the region of about 17 million people? It's not that easy, because it costs a lot of money. You know, if you really want to get to all the people, and you've got to go to all the newspapers and to all the different TV stations, whatever, it costs money. But we are all just private people, individuals that, firstly, to be part of the ULA doesn't cost you money. If you want to donate, that's fine, but we don't force people to give 1 cent. So now we've got to get the mandate. And this is where we are at the moment. We've got at the moment about 456,000, and I must make that very clear, mandates of people in terms of international law that can be verified. To put a figure up and say we've got...
How long have you been working on it? 456,000.
456, yeah. Just on 2 years now. There are people that put up big amounts, and we know that it's not even close. But we've got it must be audited at the end of the day. So that's why we make sure. In fact, I think it was about 2 months ago, we worked through everything again, and then because the system doesn't pick it up itself, so we had to throw out another, I think it was about 7,000 of those mandates again. But let me finish the question that you asked me.
Sure.
Where are we and what is outstanding? So once we've got the mandate, then obviously you've got the mandate from the people they want to secede. Then we write a letter to the South African government in which we demand a referendum. Now, with our experience, and I've got no other word, with the ignorance and of the government, they will ignore it. Fine. And then we can decide ourselves, do we write another one, another 2, another 3, another 4 letters to demand a referendum? In the meantime, because that's part of international law, is that you must work with the international community. The international community will also write or communicate in whatever way, even through the ambassadors, to the South African government, you must now give them a referendum. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of people say, yes, but what happens if they just, at the end of the day, blatantly just ignore it and don't give you the referendum? But I'll get to that now. Let's assume, because we're talking about the pure legal process, the pure de jure process here. Let's say, for instance, they say, fine, they will give us the referendum. We now know, if we have the referendum, that we will obviously win it, because we've got already the 50% plus. So then you have the referendum, you have the people that vote for it, and then you basically secede. But there's one point still outstanding, and that is the acceptance of any other another country to accept your sovereignty, your secession. Once another country have accepted it, and I'm talking about literally verbally, in public, once they've done it, from that moment you are sovereign. Now, that's obviously the way we would like to do it. That's the way we would love to do it, because there's no complications and problems, but we're also very realistic. It's very unlikely that this arrogant ANC government will do it like that. They hate the minorities in this country, and therefore they made let me first go back to before 1994. There were 17 apartheid laws. 17. There's at the moment 114 reversed apartheid laws. Now, that's something that I do not understand. They hate us, but they don't even want to talk about us about leaving them. So we say, go, we'll stay here, you carry on, but they don't want to talk about us. But I suppose that's part of the whole power trip that people get on, or alternatively realize that the people that they hate so much, if they're not there anymore, then there's nothing to steal anymore. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's interesting, and there's a real long line of thought that I guess we could debate for hours. The point about this is that there is a global move towards self-determination. We know that. We've seen even on the African continent a couple of, South Sudan being an obvious example of countries that have broken away. Even in the UK, the Scots are talking about having another referendum for their independence. We've had Brexit. This, I suppose, you could call Caxit, but whatever you do determine it. But you clearly have been at it for a while. If you've got 450,000 people supporting you, it's not something that we've seen much in the media. We certainly haven't seen discussion of this at a national level. At what point do you believe this will become a national discussion, a national debate, something where your voice will be heard much more than it is at the moment?
Alec, I would have liked it, and my logic told me that should have actually happened already, looking at the problems in the country. But unfortunately, the problem is when your mainstream media is part of the problem, then the answer to your question is that will only happen when even the mainstream media are forced to talk about it. Because before you don't really get to the masses of people, it won't happen. That's the unfortunate thing about it. So as long as you can just ignore it, the problem goes away. Well, this is the way that mainstream media works, but that's the way that the ANC government also works. Unfortunately for both those parties, it actually catches up to them in a big way, and we are actually seeing this in America at the moment. For instance, with CNN, suddenly they don't have a choice. Their ratings are going down so badly that now suddenly they've got to start admitting things that they would have literally 2 and 3 and 5 months ago wouldn't have even thought of talking about, forget about admitting. So the answer to your question is, I can't answer you when it will become something that we would love everybody to talk about. But the logical answer is when people know about it. So either we carry on, luckily there's no deadline on the process of secession. So you don't have a specific time and you've got a due date. You've got to do it by this date, otherwise it just goes away or becomes null and void. No, absolutely not. So we either go on like this and we get the message out there, basically, well, I want to say 99% through social media, and eventually get to all the people, or alternatively, the country goes into the total mess that we were in 2 weeks ago, and it goes further than just Gauteng, Natal, and even smaller areas, and people are forced to do it. Or alternatively, we are forced, based on the legal process that we followed up until now, to then declare a unilateral declaration of independence, which is obviously the other possibility.
Well, you'd certainly need a heck of a lot more than 450,000 people if you were to do that. I was looking back through the records, and before the Union of South Africa in 1910, the Natal province, my home province, voted on the 12th of June 1909, 75% in favor of joining the Union and 25% not. There were only 25,000 people involved there, so it was a much smaller logistical issue. But that is, I suppose, rational that the 4 different provinces at that stage voted to join the Union. If what I'm hearing from you is that the provinces or the parts of the country also could vote to unjoin the Union, or now the Republic of South Africa, is that where your logic stems from?
Yeah, you're talking about basically a vote. Now, in that case, it was
a referendum. Yeah,
it's a referendum for in that case, the British forces that was in charge to make a decision what to do. What we're doing is something totally different. Yes, on the one hand, giving your mandate through a referendum, or in this case, mandate. Through a legal process of just giving it to you to us on our website, for instance, that's the same. But after that, it's not even close to the same, because in fact, the law of secession didn't even exist in 1910. It only came into existence much later. But the interesting thing is that 193 countries have already successfully seceded. 193 countries.
So there's a template.
Of which, well, the interesting thing is that each country, obviously, all countries in the world have got different circumstances and different positions on a lot of different things. In our case, we've got 2 million different kinds of people, and this and that. It's totally different in South Africa. We've got how many provinces? We've got how many different ethnic groups, and everything is different in each and every country. And therefore, the law on secession is not a fixed law. It actually, if for your situation, you are doing the so-called right thing, but it's not in the law of secession, then they will decide, will they accept it, and who are they here? No, we're not talking about the International Criminal Court or the Court of The Hague or whatever. No, we're talking about the international community. Because at the end of the day, the international community actually decides your fate. That's the reality. But on the positive side, that's also why it's law. It's written into international law that only one country must accept your secession to be successful. So
how do you get on? How do you get on with the others in the Western Cape who are trying to agitate for independence? Are you Are you aligned with them? Are you going your own way, doing things differently?
Alec, well, firstly, we as the ULA have put out, and I've even put out videos, but we've even put out how many statements saying that we will work with any person or any organization that legally works towards self-determination. Now, what does that mean? It means you've got to work towards self-determination. It does not mean that you've got to talk about self-determination, but that's not actually your goal. Your goal is to get money from the public, is to get votes for your political party, is to basically use the problem here for your own advantage. Yes, of course, there are organizations that we totally work with, but then there are one or two, three that we know, but we're not here to throw mud, and I'm not going to go into that, but that we know for a fact that are not working towards self-determination. We know that quite simply because if you tell me, we sit around a fire and you tell me how you've got a show, BizNews, and you tell me all about it, and I've got to give you money, but the moment that I ask you, so yeah, give me the website, can I look at it? You've told me you've been doing it a long time, but then you can't show me and you can't tell me where it is, and you haven't even started, but you've told me how. Then we all know that it's a lot of hogwash.
What about the next stake in the ground for you? Because we'll all be watching, certainly here at BizNews, we'll be watching your progress. When will the next flag be raised from your side?
Alec, I would have liked to raise the other flag quite some time ago. One of the things that we realized last year is when we go independent, obviously we can't use the South African rand anymore as currency, quite simply because the way that the government is going at the moment, and with the fact that we are downgraded to junk, which I've said 8 years ago already, the moment that we are finally downgraded to junk, then we will follow the Zimbabwean model. The reality is, it is happening, but we also know that the Chinese are keeping the rand higher than its genuine value. Looking at the economy of South Africa at the moment, if it wasn't for such and I must say, involved but strong ground level economy, we would have been under long ago. It's impossible for any country to actually survive if the government has got the economic policies that our government has got. Or must I put it different? They've got a certain policy, and then they've got a different way of dealing with it, and they're dealing with it as much as they can put in their pockets. And this is the interesting thing. If what I'm saying is wrong, then it's a legal case for them to take me to court. Why don't they? And
well,
I've made it clear that
maybe they got other things. Maybe they got other things on their mind. That's the way that they would come back. But that flag, what is your next point?
Sorry.
Your next point of action, in other words. So what are you going to execute on next, so that we can see that this is really serious?
Yeah. So we decided last year that we have to have our own currency. So then we started with something totally new that, people look at money and they say, well, the first thing that you did was you exchanged cows and chickens, bartering, and then this, and then they got to fiat currency, and then the world changed a lot and they went to cryptocurrency. Well, we are taking it one step further, and we are going to a digital currency, which we have registered already. And this is the next thing that will get into, well, hopefully, we hope, even into mainstream media, but if not in South Africa, at least in the rest of the world. We have registered a new currency for the new country, but it's a currency that can also be used in other countries because it's a digital currency, and it's a digital currency with a value store. And the value store that we chose is gold, platinum, or silver, meaning precious metals. Now, that's never been done before, meaning we won't have, obviously, any fiat currency because there's no there's no backing for it. And this new currency, we have registered it. It's called the Guilder. And obviously, the value store will not be in South Africa. That will be totally stupid, especially looking at Article 25 of the Constitution that they want to change. And once that goes through, that will make a massive difference also to our own financial system or our own financial position in the ULA to have money basically to get the message out to people. So once that goes through, and we are working at it very diligently, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully, it will really kick off.
Are you lobbying any country to support you? You said earlier that just one country has to agree to your independence.
Alec, the interesting thing is and you're using the word lobbying. No, we don't lobby any country, but obviously we talk to a lot of countries because this is it's an extremely sensitive thing in terms of international politics. For countries to support something, a group of people in one country while they are still working with that country. And my answer to you is no, we're not lobbying any country, but we have already got more than one country that will support it. And that is the first time that I'm saying this now, that'll go public. We do.